Small habits create big change. Welcome to the New Money Habits podcast, where we help you build healthier habits for money and life so you can live with more peace, confidence, and purpose. I'm your host, Nino Villa. Today, joining me, my co-host, Karen Hackman, who is the voice in all things money and marriage. And we are talking about it's mid-year reset time. And we know that it's an opportunity to look back and see what's been working, what hasn't been working, but really re-engaging mid-year to say we are going to finish out strong.
Oh, Nino, it's great to be with you this week. And I just wanted to, as we are thinking about money reset, I wanted to share with you something that I found recently from Fidelity Investments, the 2026 Couples and Money Survey. And I saw that, would you believe, 44% of couples don't talk about money because they're afraid that it will start in an argument. So I just wanted to pick your brain today. Tell me, were you and your wife on the same page when you got married?
Oh, that's a loaded question because let's see, we dated 3 years prior to getting married and we were already co-mingling a lot of our finances. I think my wife allowed me to take the majority lead there. I think she placed a lot of trust in me, even if it was unwarranted early.
I love that. But tell me, who told you to do that? Who told you to talk about money and how to talk about money?
When we first moved in together, because we lived together prior to getting married, I think we approached it a lot like roommates. By that time, I had had roommates before. And
Yeah.
so there was just conversations about like, hey, this is the rent. Are we splitting it 50-50? Are we splitting it based more on how much each person makes? So I remember living in a house with 3 other guys. We had a 4-bedroom house, 4 of us living there, and we broke out rent. Instead of dividing it 4 ways, we divided it in size of the bedroom. So I selected the smallest bedroom on purpose because I wanted the lowest rent.
Mhm.
So when Christina and I sat down and even kind of talked about it at first, it was just we were just looking at like, hey, what are the shared expenses here and how are we going to cover those shared expenses? I don't think it was much more than that. It was pretty kind of straightforward stuff that we were just like, hey, we have bills to pay. How are they getting paid?
Yeah, that's brilliant. And can I ask, did you join bank accounts as well?
Not when we first moved in together, but
Mhm.
shortly. I'm trying to remember if we joined bank accounts even before we got married. I'm pretty sure we did. But at first it was, managing individual accounts.
Yeah, that's great. So when my husband and I got together, when we got married, we then had joint bank accounts, but no one actually said to us, you should be watching what's coming in and what's going out and spend less than you earn. And now, obviously,
Mm.
I know so much better. But at the time, because no one told us, we didn't really figure that out for ourselves. And I like to think that we're quite clever people. We're not like silly with money, or maybe we are, or we weren't not stupid people. We kind of
Mhm.
like we kind of like to think that we knew what we were doing, but we didn't at all. And it showed our finances were a complete mess. And I think looking back, we had marriage prep classes, we had marriage mentors for the first year of our married life, and we had a financial advisor. And none of those people said to us, have you sat down and talked about money? And so when I saw this statistic, 44% of couples don't talk about money because they're afraid it's going to turn out into an argument. I totally get it because I was there myself. And so I kind of guess I wanted just to share that today because I wanted to share with these couples, I wanted to give them hope because you can turn the ship around and you can start talking about money together and
Yeah,
working as a team.
what comes to mind as you're sharing that is sometimes, depending on how you argue, arguments actually make things stronger. Now, not if you don't know how to argue well, and that's a whole nother conversation for a whole nother day, but I'll give you a little snippet into mine and my wife's life. We have rules of engagement when we argue. And for
Mhm.
instance, one of those rules of engagement is we do not call each other names. So I have never called her a derogatory term. She has never
Yeah.
called me a derogatory term. We don't argue like that. So when we are arguing, it's more of like we're seeking to understand the other person's perspective. Now,
Mhm.
I'll be the first to admit, I'm not always good at that. I kind of want to be heard and I have to remember to also hear,
Mhm.
right? So I say don't avoid it just because you think it's going to lead to an argument, because if you argue in a healthy way,
Mm,
it actually just turns into conversation that might be heated and spirited because you have opinions and whatnot. But if you're also opening up a space for the other person to be heard, and that
mm,
person is opening up a space for you to be heard, well, now
mm.
you're communicating, and that's important.
Yeah, absolutely. And although my husband and I didn't call each other names or anything, it was on my part, and now I see it and I own it, and I've
Mm,
changed. It was very much you spend too much money, what and that kind of
mm. An
the blame.
accusatory
I was
tone.
Yeah, and I was definitely the adult treating him like a child.
Mm,
And so since knowing that that's not okay, and learning how to talk about money and how to approach the conversation, has really helped us to change things around. But it took me about 3 years to get that right. From the moment from 2018 when I thought, okay, things have got to change because our finances are a mess. So I started to do my research, started to listen to podcasts, read books, and then take snippets here and there on what I was doing wrong. And I'll give you a classic example that my husband is a night owl and I am an early bird. So I get up around 5 a.m. and I've been awake around 2 hours before I take my husband a cup of tea and say, it's time to wake up now. Um,
mhm.
and during those 2 hours, I'd already looked at the bank balance, already figured out what's this money, well, questioning where this money is going. So I take him his tea and say, and by the way, when the poor bloke wasn't even awake. So it was things like that that I really needed to relearn and to, just to change the way I was talking about money, when and where and with what tone I was talking about money with.
Yeah, that is so important because I think back to early on, again, Christina probably gave me more control and trusted my leadership more than I had earned or deserved at that point. And that control it can feel very stressful.
Mm,
I just know that for me, being kind of the man in the relationship and the leader and the provider and the protector and that sort of thing,
mm,
I took the responsibility of the finances very seriously, but it was also very stressful, especially
mm,
if we were getting to a point that I remember when we relocated to where we are now, the job stability wasn't there. And so we were renting, and all of a sudden we couldn't afford rent. And so our finances, we have to do something different because we can't afford to pay the rent. And it just got really stressful. And I
mm,
did not manage that season gracefully. There was a lot of, just kind of demanding, we're going to cut back here. We got to do this differently. And you got to stop spending that and it just wasn't a healthy season. It's a season I
mm.
have since learned from. And I think
Yeah,
that's the other part of this is once you recognize, as you did, that, ooh, the way I'm approaching this, it's not healthy. It's not
yeah,
effective. It's not helping anything. You can learn from those mistakes
mm,
and just take a step in a new direction. It says, I'm going to do things differently for
mm,
the sake of my sanity, for the sake of my marriage, for the sake of healthy conversations about money. Because I don't know about where you are, Karen, but here in the United States, there are three major impacts to the rate of divorce in the United States. And one of those three is not being on the same page about money.
yeah. Yeah, and it doesn't it show that how much money encompasses everything. Everything you do or say is revolved around money. And especially, I don't know about in the States right now, I think I know that your cost of living crisis has just gone through the roof. Am I right?
Absolutely, it has. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. And the pressure for everybody just to keep spending less than they earn is getting harder and harder because where I am, everything is going up. Your fuel is increasing, your food costs are increasing, yet your wages are not. So you've really got
Correct.
to be on the same team talking about money and seeing where you can cut back. So make sure that you're not spending more than you earn.
Yes. Yeah, we are seeing those same pressures here in the States, and it is a growing pressure. I know even for me personally in my own home, it's the cost of goods and services
Mhm.
has skyrocketed. The wages have plateaued. They're not
Mhm.
increasing. I've said it
Yeah.
like this on recent episodes of the podcast. We've experienced nearly 26% inflation in the
Mhm.
last 4 years. With that type of inflation, and your wages have not increased 26% in the last 4
Yeah.
years, it does mean that your dollar simply doesn't go as far as it used to. And because
Yeah.
it doesn't go as far as it used to, it means you can't buy as many groceries. For instance, my wife and I, we have a $600 a month grocery budget, and we're
Yeah.
just watching how that $600
Yeah.
does not go as it
Mhm.
used to. That is just a reality. And so then
Mhm.
the question becomes, what needs to change? What can change, since we don't have as much purchasing power with that
Mhm.
$600. What do we do?
Yeah. Should I just tell you what we do? I
Sure.
have my shopping list. I shop my larder first, check what we've got, meal plan, and then I go to the store and I put everything on the conveyor belt. But the things that are treats, like
Mm.
my candy or my sodas, they go to the end of the conveyor belt. And I always say to the cashier, I have this much money. Please let me know when I get close, because sometimes you can see the screen and you can see the total adding up,
Mhm.
but other shops you can't.
Yep.
And they've always been absolutely brilliant, and they understand, right? They understand that you've only got a
Mhm.
certain amount of money. And then I come home and my family are like, "Did you get the candy? Could we afford the sodas?" And more often than not these days, it's no, we can't. It's had to stay in the store. So I'm really sorry, but it's just one way that we are making things work in our house grocery budget
Yeah.
recently.
That's a throwback to a number of years ago. My wife and I were doing the same thing. We do so much shopping, like grocery pickup now, where she
Yeah.
just orders on the app and then we go pick it up. But I remember the days where even putting items into the cart, there was like, this section of the cart over here is all like kind of the treats and whatnot. And if there's not enough money, those are the first things to go back.
Yeah.
So they were the
Yeah.
last things on the belt, as you had said.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, Karen, you work with a lot of different couples,
Mhm.
and how do you help, like, whether it's a couple that's been together and married for decades and
Mhm.
they're just now talking about money, or if it's like a newlywed couple and this is the first time they've even had that opportunity, how do you get them
Mhm.
started having these conversations that 44% of them are afraid to have?
Well, first of all, I start by asking them what's their money story. How did they grow up with money? Because you know
Mm.
that by the age of 7, our attitudes to money have already been formed. So especially when it's a newly married couple, tell them that, you both come from different families, you both come from different households. And it doesn't matter how you've been brought up. Not one way is not right and one way is not wrong. This is your history. This is what you know about money. And now together we're coming together as one. And you are creating a new family. So we have to understand. It's like listen to understand, listen to be understood,
Mm.
and and to start afresh. You're starting a new family, so you can create a new start. And so that's what we do. We talk about their money stories, and it helps us to realize where they've coming from. So recently one client, his father taught him how to, if he wanted something from the store, his dad would go buy it and then the son would pay it back every week from his pocket money. So we were like, well,
Mm.
your dad taught you about credit then. Where the wife was like, the dad would say, don't leave yourself short, meaning have a buffer before you
Mhm.
spend all your money. So things like that really help them to understand where we were both coming from. So that's an always really important first step. And then it's only after that that we get into the numbers and we have a look at what's coming in and what's going out and what should we prioritize and what their values are.
What I really appreciate about that is it gives an opportunity, if done correctly. And as you said, one of the rules of that conversation ought to be that I'm providing a space for you to just be heard. Right?
Yeah,
I'm not casting judgment on
yeah.
your money story. I'm just hearing, maybe for
Hmm.
the first time, like, okay, so that's what you've been taught. And it's just seek to understand and listen to be understood, as you said.
Yeah, yeah.
What I like about that is it really allows somebody, if done properly, to put themselves in the other person's shoes. Okay, like how would I deal with money if those were the lessons that I
Mm.
was taught?
Yeah.
And now you have empathy and an understanding of where the other person's coming from. And as you said, it's not that they're right or that they're wrong. It's just what is. We're just
Yes.
dealing with reality.
Yeah.
And then we can start to come together and formulate our own plan and forge our own plan forward. I'm doing this with a young couple right now in which I work with the young lady's parents already. So I'm very knowledgeable about what she's been taught and kind of her money background, at least from teenage years. And working with the young man, he has shared a lot about his upbringing. And just recently, he had asked me, like, there's this subject that I want to approach, but I just don't know how to necessarily navigate that. And so we talked about how, especially early on, as you're just starting to consider like this could be a long-term relationship, this courtship could turn into marriage, and so
Hmm.
we're talking about what would money look like together rather than his money and her money. Like
Hmm.
if it's our money, what does that look like? And so there was some transparency things that he was curious about, but he didn't want to be overbearing, and but being able to have conversations
Mm.
about, what does transparency look like early on, so that when the financial situations might be different, right? Based on upbringing, maybe one person is debt averse, and so they don't have any
Mm.
student loans, they don't have any credit cards, and that's just not something that they have, versus somebody else who wasn't taught those things. Well, they come into the relationship and maybe they have tens of thousands of dollars in student loan debt. Maybe they have some
Mm.
credit card debt. And so now you have to have a conversation about, okay, well, it's not that one is right and the other one is wrong, but how do we want to move forward? Do we want to move
Mm.
forward trying to live debt free? And if so, how do we get both of us to that place and then move on from there?
Yeah, so important that you have those conversations and discussions so that we're all on the same page, and so you make a plan to move forward. I
Yep.
love it personally, and I've worked recently with a couple that've been married over 13 years, and they've never talked about money before, and they
Oh,
were like, "Well,
wow.
this makes so much sense now," and they were like, "Now they're now together, they're creating their emergency fund, their peace of mind fund, so that they, have that peace of mind when things go wrong, as they will sadly one day, so I remember I just get really excited. And I came home the other day and my daughter said, how was it, Mum? And I said, "Oh, it was really fun. Da 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 da." Obviously, don't go into too many details. But she's like, "Mum, it's talking about money. How can that be fun?" And I'm like, "It is, because they're creating a future together now where they're thinking of their family and thinking of themselves as a team rather than
Mhm.
not talking about money at all."
You had said earlier, money touches every aspect of our lives. And so, if this is a topic that we're not talking about, then how much more are we not talking about some other things that are important? And this is a very predominant way that two people relate to one another who are in a romantic relationship like that. Every aspect of their life, it's touching where they live, it's touching what they drive, it's touching what they eat. And so if you're avoiding the conversation about money, you are probably avoiding a lot of other important conversations.
Yeah, exactly. It's just good for them to open that door of communication so that then other things can also be talked about in a non-judgmental and a very peaceful, calm environment, which I know that you and I both do when we're speaking to couples together.
Yes. And so you said it starts with having like the money story talk
Hmm.
first. Where does the conversation normally lead after that?
After that, we talk about where they are now. We get all the numbers on the table. No judgment, no secrets, no shame. Let's just have a look where you're at right now, and then we follow that on with where do you want to be, and that's one of my favorite sessions with them because they get to dream, and it's like, imagine money, no problem. Where would you like to be in 5 years' time, or maybe we even narrow it down. Where would you want to be in 30 days' time, right? And
Mhm.
then together we can visualize. And I love creating their whys, and I always encourage my couples to think about, maybe they want to go on a trip to Japan, or maybe they want to create their peace of mind fund or to get out of debt. And we create their whys, which means that they create photos or pictures of their why. This is their reason. And
Mm.
and I encourage them to put this around the house, including places where people will see. So when friends or family come round, they can go, "What's all this about?" And it's a great conversation starter because not many people talk about money openly and honestly. So I'm all for it. I'm all for like throwing the whole negative connotations about talking about money, throw it out the window, and let's start talking about money. And people are really encouraged and motivated by these why pictures. And also when they're talking to friends, maybe they're saying, I know, like you said the other day that you wanted to go to a game. Was it a Bills game?
Mm-hmm.
And you were
That's
like,
right.
okay, can't really do that. But why don't you come round to our house and let's have a party and let's bring some food and share some drinks and have a great time there? So, things like, well, if you want to come out for a meal, no, we can't afford to do that right now. Or we're really watching the money this month. Why don't you come round here, bring some food, we can have a potluck and have a good time anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. I love the idea of eliminating the taboo
Mm,
around talking about money openly. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about what we make and what we owe, and let's share best practices, and let's share what's truly working versus what is robbing us of our
mm,
peace and our comfort
yeah.
and our joy. Because whether it's we're trying to keep up with the neighbors or we just
Mhm.
think that this is how life is, you know, there's to me, there's no greater defeating thought process than
Mm,
it is what it is. Oh
yeah.
my goodness. Talk about like just decimating your ability to say, no, 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 hold on. Wait a minute. I don't have
Mm,
to accept these circumstances. I don't have to accept this is just the way there's got
yeah.
to be a better way. And there often is. I love
Mm,
sitting down with clients and going through in the early stages, just learning like what is the income, what are the expenses, where are some of the places where you overspend, and just having these conversations.
mm,
Because once we do that and once we put numbers on paper, we usually find that the situation is not nearly as bad
mm,
on paper as it is in somebody's head.
yeah. Yeah,
And what a
exactly.
relief that they see. So often they actually make more money than what they're spending,
Mhm.
and they're flabbergasted by this idea, but it's because we live in an ultra consumer driven society where everything is about I'm going to get it now. There's no delayed
Mm,
gratification. So it doesn't matter if I have the money because I have credit, so I'll just consume it
yeah.
now. I'll pay for it later. And because of that, again, it's so much worse in our heads, but once we've kind of put it on paper, it's like, look, if you didn't do that, and if you just kind of put some guardrails in and said, hey, this is
Mhm.
the money that I have to use, and these are my priorities this month, you actually have more money coming in than you have going out, which
Yeah.
means there's margin, and that margin means that you can do other things like save for either your peace of mind fund or that trip that you want to take or that thing you want to
Mhm.
buy, or you can eliminate the debt that you have acquired. And so there's more hope out there than more
Mm,
people talk about. And I
yeah.
wish we would just talk about money more openly, because then people would realize like, oh, wait a minute, there is hope around this, and I'm
Yeah.
not just a rat caught in a wheel.
Yeah, exactly that. And I know a couple I worked with last week, we got to the part where we were having a look at all the numbers, and previously, they said every time they spoke about money, it would always end up in an argument. So they were quite nervous about coming together. And at the end, and it took like less than 60 minutes, they were like, oh, wow, that wasn't as bad as I thought. And actually, I'm quite excited now because I can see that we can do this and we can do that and we can cut back here as well. And I think for a lot of people, they worry about the bills coming through and maybe they don't open them because, or, have a look at the details because they're scared. And I know that with one guy I worked with recently, he was just paying the Amex card like every month, and the interest was $100 a month, and we were like, "Come on, let's just let's open these statements and have a look," and we
Mm.
discovered that the card was being fraudulently used for the last 2 years
Oh, wow.
because and it was subtle. It was 3.99 here, 7.99 here, 9.99 here, and it was just
Mm.
all adding up. So thankfully, Amex were brilliant, and there was an investigation, and the money was returned, which was fantastic. So yeah, so it's just those things of don't be frightened because you are in control. You are the driver. Yeah. So let's get all the information and let's make a plan.
Yeah,
So empowering.
yes, because fear paralyzes people. And
Mm,
so if I can encourage listeners to do anything, it is to overcome the fear.
mm,
Fear will keep you avoiding things and certainly will keep you paralyzed. And just facing things head on. I remember sitting down with a potential client. This is a number of months ago now. And as we looked at it, I know that he was paralyzed by fear. He
mm,
was just really concerned about first, he didn't think that he made more than he was spending, and just on basic things like rent, utilities, food. And when we started to look closer at it, it was like, yes, it is a small margin, but you actually do make more than what your basic expenses are. It doesn't leave a whole lot for doing things that you would enjoy and rather be doing. So I understand that, right? So sometimes we forego our responsibility because I want to
mm.
do this thing more over here. But as we were looking at it, we started thinking about what are ways to get the income up and the expenses down, because so
Yeah.
often the focus is on how to get the expenses down, but sometimes there's opportunities to get the income up, whether
Hmm.
that's a side hustle, a second job, or maybe overtime. Well, he happened to work at a place that is begging people to work
Wow.
overtime. So we said, well, what if you started working some overtime? And
Mm,
the problem is, the moment you suggest something like that, I don't know why, but most people hear like this is a long-term, lifelong commitment. Like that's not what I'm talking about, right? I'm not
yeah.
talking about
Yeah.
working 50, 60, 70 hours a week for the rest of your life. But what if you did it? We sat down maybe with like 5 months left in the year last year. So what? Maybe August-ish. We sat down
Yeah.
together and I said, what if you worked overtime between now and the end of the year? Let's kind of just calculate some numbers and see what would be possible. Well, what would be possible is he would have eliminated all of his debt because he didn't
Wow.
have a ton, but he would have
Yeah.
eliminated all of his debt and he would have started a peace of mind fund that would have had about $2,000 in it just in those 5
That's
months.
amazing.
And he was just like floored. Like he's wondering what kind of miracle math was I doing? Because he's just like, there's no way. And it's like, no, when you actually sit down and you start to
Mm,
map it out, you're going to
yeah.
actually see things that you can't see when you're only ever just
Mm,
repeating them in your head like it's this bad and I'm never
yeah.
going to get out of it. And you start telling
Yeah.
yourself these scripts around your
Mm,
money, you
mm,
start to believe them and your beliefs drive your behaviors. And so if you believe you can't get out of it, you're going to behave as if you
mm,
can't get out of it until you break that thought
mm.
process and you're like, nope, there is a way. I just haven't found it yet.
Yeah. And that mindset is everything, isn't it? You
It
know,
really is.
just those few months. And you were saying it's not forever, it's just for a few months. And look at the difference that you can make. How empowering and exciting was that for him?
Yeah. And the other exciting part about that is once the debt was eliminated, we talk about like the income versus the expenses, and there wasn't a whole lot of margin. But had he gotten rid of all the debt, it was going to free up even more margin
Yeah.
where it's like, wait a minute, now I don't have to concern myself with the payments over here. Like, for instance,
Mm,
one was the car, right? Like, he could
yeah.
have even paid off the car in those 5 months, which
Wow.
was again, just mind blowing. But it's all like,
Yeah.
and then that $300 a month car payment goes away.
Mm, yeah.
Wait a
Yeah.
minute. What? Wait, what? So again, just being able to see things a little bit differently, knowing that a decision like that is just for a season. Do it for a
Yeah. Yeah.
season, and that season starts to change everything.
Yeah, absolutely. So exciting. And I know we're talking about mid-year reset, and it doesn't have to happen on, you don't have to do that in on January 1st, right? You could do it
Right.
any time of the year.
Yes. Yeah. We had last week I spoke to Mike about a similar topic and we were talking about the same thing where it's like you don't have to wait until January 1. You don't have to
Mm,
wait until next month. You don't even have to wait
yeah.
until Monday of next week. Today can be that day that you say, "Nope, you know what? We're making a change." And we're making
Yeah.
that change today.
Yeah. And so exciting, as you said, to that man that you worked with, your client, just a few months of just changing a few things. And just imagine that the money he's saving on not only those repayments, but that debt, that interest as well on that debt as well. And
That's
that's
right.
just like, for many of my clients, not paying that interest is a huge motivating factor as well. And really exciting to think about what you could do with that $100 every month,
Yes.
What could you do with it?
Yes, because when it's not being allocated to interest, you now get to decide, how do I want to allocate that extra money?
Yeah, super exciting.
Yeah. So Karen, tell our listeners, we've talked about, okay, mid-year reset. One of the things to do is to definitely get on the same page with your spouse and have conversations. And another is to look at the numbers, and it's not going to be as bad as you think it is.
Yeah.
But so what's that next step that our listeners can take today? Because they're not going to wait until January 1. They're not going to wait until next month. They're not going to even wait until next week. They're going to hear this and they're going to say, today is the day. What should they do today?
Today, I would say, speak to your spouse and say, hey, I've got this idea. Can we allocate some time at the weekend where we're not rushed around? We're not rushing. No one's coming around. Can we just sit down and have a think about where we want to be in 30 days' time? Can we just have a little look at the numbers and make a plan? And just giving your spouse that time to mentally prepare is wonderful. Learn from my mistakes. This is what I recommend. And just then start talking about where you are now and where you want to be, and then start making a plan. Because as you said, when you're able to make a plan, everything else just calms down. That worry and that fear just evaporates because you've got a plan and you've got to work together as a team to make it happen. And it's great accountability, but also challenge, but in a loving way when you're both on the same page.
So they can schedule a little money date, if you will.
Exactly,
a little
that.
Personal finances date. We're going to sit down.
Yeah.
I think I've heard you even suggest in the past, like, sit down, grab your favorite drink and
favorite beverage, yeah.
Yep, and just have a little chat. I love it.
Yeah.
I think another thing that our listeners can do is, if you decide that, hey, I want to do this, but I'm just not sure exactly how to do it, I think one of the things you can also do is go to your mate and say, hey, I'm really thinking about doing this, and there is an incredible coach. Her name is Karen Hackman. She can walk us right through this. I think our listeners should consider scheduling a free discovery session with you and figuring out if working with you would be right for them, because you do a great job of guiding couples through this process and through these talks. And so I think they ought to consider that as well. And they can find information in the description on how to do that.
Yeah, thanks, Nino. And I know I'm passionate about working with couples because I know what a game changer it is to go from not talking about money to talking about money and having a plan and working together. Complete game changer in all aspects of your married life. So yeah, it's not just a change for your money, it's a change for your marriage as well.
Fantastic. Well, if you guys want more, consider also becoming a member of the New Money Habits community. You can start your free trial. And again, the link is in the description to do that, where you'll find more tools, resources, and just the things that will help you and your spouse get on the same page. Check that out. Again, the link is in the description. All right. And so that does it for us. But any final thoughts as we close out, Karen?
Yeah, I just love to tell everybody, if you are struggling to speak to your spouse about money, have hope, because you can talk about money without having an argument. Just get in touch with me and we can work it out together.
That does it for this episode of the New Money Habits podcast. Follow us on your favorite social media platform. Want more? Become a New Money Habits member and start your insider free trial today. And until next time, remember that the peace Jesus gives is a gift the world cannot give.